So, in the interest of exploring various philosophical quandaries and questions, I felt I should record a few, I suppose soliloquies is the term, or at least useless ramblings. For the first one, let's talk about what art is. The simplified definition is stylized expression. Well, this is a personalized definition arrived at with a little bit of help. Originally, I had just used the phrase expression, but realized with some conversation that stylized needed to be added. So, to further dig into this, let's talk about both of those two words. So, first off, expression. What is expression? So expression is a alteration of the word express. And what does it mean to express? Well, if we look at how it's used in terms, we express things. We express ideas. We express, well, mostly we express ideas. And in a slightly off-tangent format, when you think about it, we also use express for way back when we were, using trains more commonly. I mean, we still use trains, so I suppose it still follows. But calling something the 1812 Express or what have you, or the Railway Express, or something like that. And what's interesting is with both of those, we can bring it back to a particular meaning, which is to convey, to deliver, so to speak. So to express is to deliver. And the reason why we have express as a word separate from convey is due to connotation, right? Where, generally speaking, when you're talking about conveyance or the action of conveying, much like a conveyor belt, you're more commonly talking about physical things, physical objects. Now, granted, because of the nature of the English language and metaphor, we will sometimes use it today. We will say that I'm intending to convey an idea, but that's because of the nature of the English language. Generally speaking, convey is used to refer to the movement of objects. And so, with that in mind, express is generally more associated with the conveyance of ideas, with the delivery of ideas, concepts, and other ephemeral things that don't actually have a physical form. So that's the word express when we're talking about stylized expression. So let's move on to stylized. So what does it mean to stylize something? Well, that's the alteration of the word style. So what is a style? Well, it is a type of thing. And this is usually defined by specific idiosyncrasies within said item. Usually, when you're talking about style, it has to deal with the idea that there are a number of different things. Well, there are a number of different same things, which is a very weird way of saying it, but martial arts is a great example. So you have different styles of martial arts. They are all martial arts, but the style is based off of the idiosyncrasies across them. So one of them has a lot of spinning around and flippy dippy stuff. Let's say capoeira, spin around, flippy dip, and has a very specific history attached to it with fighting in secret. There actually being a different combat style attached to it outside of the entertainment version that is generally passed around. Or say Tai Chi, which has its own thing with regards to its own history. Its movements are a little bit slower, and it's quite possibly a grappling style. Um, just looking at all of the different things that you do in it, uh, it's often misinterpreted, but I digress. At any rate, style is used to identify specific instances of a particular thing that are defined that have particular differences, and that's the idea there. So to have something that has a style, it has stuff that is specific to it, and so to stylize something is to make it so that the thing is no longer the same as something else. So let's say you have just generic martial arts, which is just I punch good, I knee good, and I can kind of grapple people. So to stylize that generic martial arts, you start leaning into one of these three things, and so you say, well, I'm going to spike in grappling particularly, and I'm just gonna, we're gonna forget about all that striking stuff. No, we're not doing that anymore. So we get into Greco-Roman wrestling, or some, or just Olympic wrestling, that sort of thing. Uh, and or you could go the other way, where it's like, no kicking, no grabbing, just punching, and so we get boxing, right? So that's stylizing. That's stylizing a thing. So that's making something very specific. So coming back to that, so we have stylized, which is making something that was generic into something specific, and expression, which is the conveyance of ideas. So putting that together, it is making specific conveyances of ideas. That's stylized expression. That is what I consider art to be. Now, there's a little bit more to that, because the purpose of this stylized conveyance, or the purpose of this individualized conveyance or stylized expression, is, it differs from point to point, but generally speaking, it is to engender a engaged response. So we can talk a little bit about engagement a little bit later, but for now, we'll just focus on what is art. So stylized expression. So that now that I have that term, well, how do we apply this practically? Well, the first thing is that because this is a very, very broad definition, there are basically almost anything can be this, because the idea of expressing is essentially saying something. It can be anything. It can be saying don't go there, or eat this, or Johnny Bravo is really cool. That sort of thing. Just that sort of deal. But it goes from just mere expression to art, or stylized expression, when you individualize it. And generally speaking, so let's say, instead of saying Johnny Bravo is really cool, which I've just expressed that, I haven't added any inflection, I haven't done anything in specific to it. I go, Johnny Bravo is really cool. So that injects some additional meaning into the what is being expressed, but also it makes it individualized and, dare I say, more interesting. Because a big part of art is novelty, where the more individualized a thing is, the more valuable it becomes. I can't really explain that phenomenon in truth, but that's just a thing with regards to the human condition. We like new things. We like individualized things. We like things that are specific, things that are unique. Once something becomes rote or more common, we start to lose interest in it. I mean, there's a number of reasons for that, I suspect, but in general, the more specific and unique something is, the more we like it. And I would go so far as to say, now this is getting into, slightly more religious territory, but there's this concept of beauty, and that there are things that are more beautiful and less beautiful. That's not something I've spent too much time really thinking about, so I'm not going to explore it here, but maybe a little later I might actually explore that concept in more detail. Anyway, stylized expression. So it's making something that you express unique, stylizing it. So generally speaking, the more individualized something is, the more interest it draws, because it causes the person to ask a few more questions like, well, wait, why is it like that? Or it just makes them be like, huh, never would have thought of that. It's a new idea, it's interesting to work with, and all that jazz. And I probably won't necessarily get into the idea of good and bad art here. Right now, I'm just explaining the concept of art itself. So, like I said, it's a broad definition. There's a whole myriad of things that could be considered art. And to be sure, if you're looking at things in a particular way, almost everything can say something. Not everything is intended to say something, but almost everything can. A person can be an accidental artist, where they make a thing and they were just trying to make it match a particular use case, but in making it match that particular use case, the item itself became very unique. And just due to the form and shape that it takes in reality, it expresses more than just what it's used for. And I would say that we've kind of lost a little bit of that aspect of things, where items don't just exist to be used. The item exists to be. The item exists to engage. And again, I'll talk about engagement as a phenomenon at another point. But I do think that's something that we've kind of gotten away from, particularly with mass production, in which it's just a natural. It's a natural consequence of mass production, is that you're producing a bunch of things really quickly, and they're all to a particular spec, so they're all going to be the same thing, which means those individual items are no longer novel to each other. Now, to be sure, just because something isn't novel doesn't mean that it doesn't have artistic merit, because you can have something that is stylized in a specific way and then just has a whole bunch of prints made of it, and it's still really cool. It's just now more people can have it. It's just a little less valuable in the greater scheme of things. When you're talking about valuation of art, one of the big things for the valuation of it is how commonly circulated it is, and how many versions of it actually exist, because that will determine the rarity, and we value rarity for various reasons. So that is my take on art. So to wrap it all up, art is stylized expression, or in other words, individualized conveyance of ideas. It is the taking of a concept, object, well, excuse me, the taking of a concept, idea, and individualizing the means by which you are expressing it. That's about it there. So that is my definition of art. It's very broad. It might not be all-encompassing, but I think it covers a large amount of things. I did derive a little bit of this out of Understanding Comics, which is a fantastic book for anyone that really wants to get into the arts. I mean, in particular, it's great for anyone who wants to get in comics. I think it's a must-read if you're going to be doing comics at all. But just the arts in general, it's very good for just talking about the process of conveying ideas. But yeah, in there they described it as just expression, and I moved to stylized expression because, well, I do think that with that statement of stylized expression, now we actually have the ability to differentiate between, well, I'll just say good and bad art. And I'll talk about that at another time. At any rate, thanks for listening.